So there I was, standing in the drizzle after my dad's funeral, clutching the keys to what everyone apparently thought was junk. My brother-in-law, Richard, had just swaggered out of the lawyer's office like he'd won the Super Bowl. $500 million in full control of my dad's company got handed right to him and me. He tossed me a single, rust-flecked key. "You can have the old work truck," he said, smirking like a cartoon villain. I remember thinking, wow, grief and insult all in one afternoon. Lucky me, right? But the moment I started that engine, everything changed. Because that old truck, it still obeyed one voice of my father's. The truck sputtered like it hadn't forgiven anyone since 1985, then growled to life. The navigation screen blinked awake Dad's old system, updated sometime recently, and a single message popped up. Drive 2.Z. No address, no map markers. Just those words. Now, I know what you're thinking, Madison. You've lost the plot. Don't go following mystery GPS messages from beyond the grave. But come on. After watching Richard strut around in my father's chair like he'd built the company from dust, curiosity burned hotter than fear. When I glanced in the rearview mirror, there he was standing on the porch with my sister, Samantha, his arm draped around her like a snake wearing an expensive watch. He smiled at me, slow and smug. That smile. It dissolved my tears faster than whiskey on ice. "Stick to your flowers, Maddie," he'd said earlier. Because, yes, I run a small landscaping business. According to Richard, that made me unqualified for corporate life. Sure, mate. Tell me more about spreadsheets while I build gardens that actually live. Anyway, I pressed the pedal and didn't look back. The drive took me along the cliffs, the sea throwing tantrums below. When the track finally ended at a long-forgotten warehouse, I realized where I was Dad's very first storage site. The old Titan Logistics logo still clung to the corrugated wall like a ghost. I was expecting cobwebs and diesel fumes. Instead, the smell was tea? Earl Grey? Maybe? Close the door. "Madison," came a voice I hadn't heard, steady in months. My mother, sitting at a folding table under a single work lamp, calm as sunrise, flipping through a thick file. "Mum," I croaked. "You were supposed to be at the estate." "With them," she smirked my father's smirk. "Darling, Richard thinks what I want him to think." Then she lifted a small safe onto the table. Inside it, my father's real, final act. Dad had known everything. Every dodgy withdrawal, every forged signature, every offshore phantom company. He'd tracked it meticulously for years. He couldn't expose Richard while alive. The man would have scorched the company out of spite. So Dad let him think he'd won. He let him hang himself with his own ego. And that old truck, it was the Trojan horse, hiding the key to the real accounts, the shadow books. Mum poured me a cup of tea that shook only slightly in her hand. "He didn't leave you out, Maddie. He left you the spear." I spent the night reading pages that turned my stomach. Richard hadn't just stolen money, he'd forged Samantha's signature on massive loans. If the scheme collapsed, my sister would have gone to prison. You ever feel the moment grief mutates into armor? That was it. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. This was war. Months passed, quietly. I went back to tending gardens, mud under my nails, pretending to be the harmless sister with the rusted van. Meanwhile, Mum and I hired the best forensic accountant in the state, a quiet genius named Arthur Sterling, and we started assembling a silent army of allies. Richard had veteran board members, warehouse managers, the old logistics team. I met them in diners and truck stops. Sometimes over fry-ups, sometimes over instant coffee so bad it could qualify as punishment, but they came. Because when I pulled up in Dad's restored van, they didn't see failure, they saw continuity. I showed them proof. Just enough to make them furious, and just enough to make them ready. Behind the scenes, I bought up the company's outstanding debts, converting them legally into voting shares. Each signature, each confidential nod, tightened the noose around Richard's empire. Meanwhile, he was busy living the cliché, drinking too hard, buying yachts he couldn't afford, balking at employees who cared more than he did. He thought I was gardening as I was cultivating justice. 3 days before the big quarterly board meeting, my phone rung. Richard's voice, slurred and mean. "I need you to sign some papers, Mads," he snapped. "Estate stuff. Help streamline operations. Don't ask questions." "Oh, you know me," I said lightly. "I get nervous with contracts. I'll just bring it to the meeting." He growled, "Don't be stupid. Just sign it. Click. Call ended. He had no idea that by then, I owned the very loans he was trying to prop up. Game, set. Almost match. The day of the meeting, the top floor of Titan Logistics smelled of desperation and cologne. Richard Lambdor tried to at the head of the long glass table. His tie was off center, his confidence fraying at the edges. Let's skip the pleasantries, he balked. We're restructuring. Too many old cowards slowing innovation. The board sat stiff and silent. Then the doors opened. I walked in wearing a navy suit sharp enough to cut glass. Behind me were Arthur and Detective Miller from Financial Crimes. Richard's smirk froze halfway to his lips. What is this bring your gardener to work day? Not quite, I said. You'll see. I connected my laptop to the projector. First slide, one of those forged loan applications. Samantha's signature. Copid, pixel, perfect. Then came the data. 5 years of embezzlement. Casino wire transfers. Came in shells. The works? The room went dead, quiet except for Richard's breathing, suddenly heavy. He tried a laugh. This is ridiculous. You? Sit down. My voice surprised even me. Calm. Fine, I own the debt. Richard, I hold 60% of the vote, and I have your confession in spreadsheets. The color drained from his face like rain off marble. Det Miller stepped forward, cuffs ready. You can't, Richard hissed, trembling. Your family. No, I said softly. You're just a liability. The click of handcuffs echoed like punctuation at the end of a very long sentence. For a second, nobody moved. Then Samantha appeared in the doorway, pale, eyes wide at the sight of her own fake signature glowing on the wall. She looked between me and Richard, understanding, slamming into her like a wave. And then the tears came. Years of gaslighting and manipulation dissolving right there. When she whispered, I'm so sorry, I held her. It's okay, I said. He's gone. We're free now. And just like that, the nightmare unraveled. The months after were messy but necessary. Legal audits, restructuring, therapy for everyone, including my mother. I took the CEO title just long enough to stabilize the company, then handed it over to people who had real integrity. Alenadad's old right hand became interim president. Arthur stepped up as CFO. Titan Logistics wasn't just recovering. It was healing. Samantha found her smile again. Started speaking in her own decisions instead of his instructions. She filed for divorce, sold that mansion that had always felt like a prison, and started volunteering with women rebuilding after financial abuse. As for me, I went back to what I love, real earth, real roots, designing gardens for clients who actually respect the ground they stand on. But I kept the van. Oh, absolutely. 6 months later, I walked across the nursery's car park under a buttery sunset. There she was, the truck rebuilt in a deep forest green, edges gleaming. I slid into the seat. It smelled like fresh leather and sage. In the glove box, I found a cassette, hand-labeled in my father's handwriting, road trip mix, Sambilanpud Lapin. Curious, I slipped it in. A burst of static. Then his voice, warm and crackling with time. Drive safe. Mo. You already know the way. I didn't cry, not really, but my throat burned in that lovely, painful way only closure can cause. I started the engine and drove toward the coast, the horizon painting itself gold. The company survived. The truth survived. And maybe, just maybe, we'd all finally begun again. Because sometimes you have to let the weeds grow tall so you can yank them out by the roots. Sometimes you weaponize patience. And sometimes you find out your father was never teaching you to garden, he was teaching you how to rebuild after the storm. If this story hits you somewhere deep, if you've ever been underestimated, pushed aside, or told to stay in your lane, remember, people forget that quiet doesn't mean weak. It means watchful. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that justice can grow in silence. And hey, don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Diary, where we turn pain into power, one story at a time.